Why exactly do existing Star Wars fans dislike Kathleen Kennedy? Is the desire to have her removed from any decision-making in Star Wars justified? Or that of Lucasfilms not renewing her contract? This is Star Wars Theme, and we are the agency that Disney and Lucasfilm should listen to, if they want to make Star Wars a unified, popular and profitable franchise, once more. First of all, we must give Kathleen Kennedy her due. She has been a producer for some of the most iconic films in history. But as some may or may not know, a producer is more of a facilitator, rather than someone with creative input. All the logistics, from funds to hiring, the producer makes sure everything is there for the creatives to do their work. Still, with such an impressive resume, and her on-set presence in such films, she was given more leeway as someone who has learned in the field how to make blockbuster films. In regards to Star Wars, she also gets credit for being at the head of Lucasfilms when storylines for Mando, The Bad Batch, Rebels, Rogue One, Jedi Fallen Order and the slew of other new projects were approved. She must get credit for that. So question remains, why do existing Star Wars fans want her out of Lucasfilm? Before we answer, we want to say that though some fans may want her to face more severe professional consequences, we do not share those sentiments. Despite our belief that she did in fact work behind the scenes in bad faith, even treacherously, or at the very least with no loyalty, we at Star Wars Theme wish her success. We wish her to be hired by any other major studio, to continue making blockbusters even, to become wealthier than she is now, just as long as she never touches Star Wars again. Consider this, we have already talked in other videos how Star Wars comes from the mind of George Lucas.
You know, this is not like a series of books like Harry Potter where you've already got a template of what the stories might be. These are original stories and original ideas that come out of a world that essentially is in George's head. So
it's based on human behavior, human psychology, mythology, which is the sort of archaeology of human behavior and thinking. And since it has those motifs, it is very universal, and everybody can relate to it. It's about good and evil in us.
It is his story, fully conceived in his mind. He may not own it anymore, since he sold it, but nobody understands it more than he does. You can buy all Picasso's paintings, but not the ability to make one. The Star Wars universe was created by George, and any project that will look and feel like Star Wars needs his involvement, or of those trained by him, or of creators who love the mythos. When George Lucas sold his IP to Disney, he was in the midst of hard choices due to personal reasons, and like all of us, he saw the great job Disney did with the MCU, and thought Disney would be a great guardian for his legend for years after he was gone.
Because I looked at the future, I looked at the fact that I was going to have a baby, I looked at the fact that I was married, and I looked at the fact that I wanted to build a museum, and I looked at the fact that I wanted to make experimental films. So my life was going on a different track. I was also stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy.
At this vulnerable point in his life, Kathleen Kennedy made George Lucas believe that she would be a faithful custodian and representative of his legend, as a sort of mole within Disney. Openly expressing she would ensure the integrity of his stories.
I'm not going to do any more. That's true. I'm not going to do any more. But that doesn't mean I'm unwilling to turn it over to Kathy to do more. And I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies. I'm doing this so that the films will have a longer life, and so that more fans and people can enjoy them into the future. It's a very big universe I've created, and there's a lot of stories that are sitting in there.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them. There you go. The essence of Star Wars. I have a tremendous amount to learn from George. There's things that I want to preserve within the spirit of this company, and as it moves into Disney, I think it's vitally important to anything we create, that we hold on to the spirit of what started all of it.
Yes, this would turn out to be a deception, as she would have no intention to keep the words you just heard.
I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and we were working with a writer. It wasn't quite working out, but I was also, stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy.
Well, actually, George Lucas never wrote a script for 7, 8, or 9. As we work our way through these scripts, if we're sitting and saying, I wonder if this character can do that, or does this make sense within the rules of Star Wars? That really, he's the keeper of the flame. And the ideas that I think you're referencing are ideas that he had for other possible movies. They were small summaries that represented some thoughts and ideas, but he never wrote any screenplays.
And I had the story treatments, or outlines, and we were working on scripts.
True, some great content and characters have come through on her watch as captain of LucasFilm.
Every choice made has led to this.
But that is due to creative people, who already had a respect for the lore, and thus, made sure deliberately that their stories were compatible with existing Star Wars myth.
Star Wars is a big influence on me, because it came out in '77, I was born in '66. So I was right at the right age for that thing to hit.
Making these stories, telling stories is what I want to do, and there are very few people that are, to me, as good at it as George is. And so to learn from him over the years, I just have a tremendous respect for the fact, and I've always, I just know this is his universe. He created it. Spending so much time with him, you can see him in the DNA of things that maybe people that just watch it casually aren't as aware of.
This did not happen by chance.
I think the golden rule was not to let Vader do anything you haven't seen or established in the original trilogy. And so everything you sort of see him doing down that corridor is pretty much something from the previous films.
And for that, their work was embraced by fans. However, the flagship of Star Wars was always going to be the new sequel trilogy, the Skywalker Saga. And here Kathleen Kennedy decided, any promises made or implied, or any loyalty owed to George Lucas, would take a back seat to her own vision. Someone being ambitious is not new in show business. Perhaps this occurs on a daily basis, but the fact that this was inflicted on one of our modern time's most beloved storytellers, and equally beloved modern legend, has been especially hard for fans. Living in a time where events like this are out in the open and known, made sure that fans could pinpoint the origin of a storyline insertion that was simply not compatible with the rest of this beloved legend.
Corporations aren't storytellers. They buy properties and they exploit them over many different mediums, and that's what they try and do. They just assume that Star Wars is going to be great all the time. So when they deliver stories that are less than, say, satisfactory to the fan base, from a corporate level, they're like, well, how come? We spent $150 million on this. Why wouldn't it be great? Why don't people love this?
Kathleen Kennedy, with Disney's approval, would discard the heroes that fans actually wanted to see, and that make up what is Star Wars.
I mean, what happened wasn't great, but I don't entirely blame Kathleen Kennedy for this. And I also think that Disney had an expectation. They didn't want to base their new $4 billion investment around our classic characters.
Wanting to milk young characters who they could profit from for decades to come, Disney thrust those to the front.
Get rid of the old fogies and focus on the new gang.
And when you take your characters, I mean, from their perspective, like, we need new, exciting young people to be in these Star Wars movies. We'll have the old people in, but we got to shuffle them off as soon as we can.
KK would have a new hero in mind, a hero who would be her proxy. This is not Daisy's fault by any means. She's a fine actress and by the looks of most interviews, a genuinely kind person, that like the entire cast of this trilogy, deserved better. But KK would make sure the creative people she hired would be cold-blooded hitmen, who had no qualms executing our heroes without remorse.
The Last Jedi left some fans shocked by Luke Skywalker's story and ending. Looking back, would you change anything in your script, or do you stand by all your choices?
Nope, stand by every choice.
Our iconic characters would be given a token arc, meant to launch their new badly written characters. The treatment they gave our beloved heroes was not just lacking in respect, but it was that of contempt.
However, that said, I think they really made a mistake. And this was a Disney error, not a Kathleen Kennedy error, to not make a film about all of our heroes and give them their own film to show them still at the top of their game. I think the biggest and most egregious crime that The Force Awakens makes is it turns Luke, Han, Leia, well, Lando, you don't see, 3PO, R2, into basically sideline characters that have allowed the galaxy to go to hell. Yeah. Under their watch, apparently the First Order rose to power, and Han Solo became a deadbeat dad.
I've always hated watching you leave.
That's why I did it. So you'd miss me.
Luke ran away when the going got tough. R2-D2 has a tarp over his head the whole movie until the end.
You've come back.
And you're like, what the hell is going on here?
He's simply, dispensed with by his own son, Ben Solo, with a lightsaber to the heart, and then falls down an endless chasm. Generally, falling down an endless chasm is the kind of death that usually a villain experiences. Leading cause of death amongst villains. That's how villains go out. Falling into an endless chasm, that's how a villain goes out. And to have Han Solo die in that way and not have a last moment with Chewbacca, his loyal friend, to not have a last moment with Princess Leia or Luke Skywalker, the audience was completely betrayed of any meaning for that death.
If anyone loves the sequel trilogy or believes it is better than existing Star Wars, there is nothing wrong with that, it's their right. But, the fact that those fans have no problem with the points we've outlined, shows that what they like, is not the $4 billion IP George Lucas sold, which is original Star Wars. The lack of affection for existing lore, is very telling.
You make edgy, bold decisions like you did in this movie, how worried are you that you might also piss off people that are...
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. Yeah. And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie, which
I feel the good in you.
firsthand that how passionate Star Wars fans are.
You know, you hire Rian Johnson is a great filmmaker. I mean, Knives Out is a great movie. I loved Brick. But what,
I loved Looper, and I've been a very vocal critic of The Last Jedi, but Looper's a good movie.
I loved Looper too, and yet the story that was being told in The Last Jedi, why are you taking a beloved character who we last saw finally become a full-fledged Jedi and confronting his father in the Emperor's throne room? The next time you see him, he's barely there, and then he turns out to be a cowardly nothing of a man who's run away from his problems, living on this island by himself, a hermit.
Between the last one and this one, where the most optimistic guy in the galaxy becomes a suicidal, cranky old man telling people to get off his lawn. It's just a loop that I didn't really understand.
Like, how is that in any way, shape, or form the kind of story that Star Wars should be telling?
Although I still say a Jedi would never give up, but that's old school. This is the new generation.
I said to Ryan, I said, Jedis don't give up. I mean, even if he had a problem, he would maybe take a year to try and regroup. But if he made a mistake, he would try and right that wrong. So right there, we had a fundamental difference. Despite how somber the subject matter was.
Sure.
I mean, it says right in the script, forget the past, kill it if you have to. You're doing a pretty good job.
I'm trying.
And you can imagine a scene with Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia over, you know, a dying Han Solo. And what the words that might have been said, we'll never see that now.
But then what happened with Carrie in real life, so that was so devastating that you go, well, we'll never get the band back together.
Well, if you were to explain to corporate leaders, Han Solo was turned into a punk in Force Awakens. You've taken away his starship, you give him an idiot's death, and it all seemed very needless. Corporation would be like, what do you mean? It's very exciting. He died at the hands of his son.
It's not done in any sort of act of self-sacrifice. There isn't a moment. If you look at those two cases of Spock and his sacrifice in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, just go watch that scene.
Spock!
And then you compare it with the scene of Han Solo, meaningless, without even a funeral. And even when Rey returns and, you know, there's the knowledge that Han Solo, you know, is dead, she just goes to hug Rey, not like, you know, Chewbacca, who she's known for decades. That I don't understand.
The princess, you have to take care of her. You hear me? Huh?
And in each of the sequel trilogy movies, the deaths of the characters are handled with this, not using what I would consider to be a respectful death, which is there needs to be someone to react to that death that is meaningful in that character's life. And of course, Spock's best friend in the universe was Jim Kirk.
And always shall be your friend.
So when he made that sacrifice, it was meaningful. And Han Solo's sacrifice seemed like a waste.
I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker.
And let's say you're a kid coming to Star Wars for the first time this year. You know, you're 7 years old. You finally found your parents' Star Wars media, and you throw in the movies, and you get to end of Return of the Jedi. You can't wait to see what happens, knowing there's an episode 7. Well, there's no Luke. Their First Order, I mean, you just watched the Emperor defeated, and then the next movie, oh wait, there's Star Killer Base that's even bigger than the Death Star. They allowed that to get built.
Just, if you're watching all the movies in order, a few hours ago was alive and well and saving the universe. And my God, if there was a child and we had just finished watching Return of the Jedi, I don't know that I'd want to skip to the next movie to see what happens.
No, You know, we've been loving Han Solo for decades now.
And he had a character growth that had gotten past the kind of person that would be a deadbeat dad.
Yes. Yeah. Or leave his starship, let his starship be taken away from him. I mean, there's all these choices. You think he was going to leave Leia?
If a fan does not care how existing legend is affected by sequels, why would that fan be affected whether or not the sequels belong to that legend? Removal from canon should not be a point of controversy. Sequels could be a standalone franchise. Had KK been loyal, there would have been a unified fandom, because George had film treatments and early scripts compatible with his vision.
And obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine. So, you know, I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy.
KK could have been a hero to fans if only she had used them, but she wanted to appear smarter than George.
And they felt they knew, you know, they wanted to do a retro movie. I don't like that. Every movie I worked very hard to make them different. I make them completely different with, you know, different planets, with different spaceships, with different, you know, to make it new.
And when you try to explain to a corporation, well, Star Wars is not Star Wars the brand, it's the characters and the stories that people love. They don't just love Star Wars because of you slap a name on it. You have to tell the Star Wars stories that we fell in love with.
And I would say that if you're a Disney shareholder, you probably care even more. If you want a franchise to continue to exist and be profitable and whatnot, that the deaths of iconic movie characters be treated with respect. And it's an opportunity not just for the fictional characters that love that character in that world to say goodbye, it's an opportunity for the audience to say goodbye as well.
She lied, she deceived, she manipulated, but we are not her moral police, so those character traits are not for us to judge. But this legend's been cherished for over 40 years, and these events were played out publicly for everyone to see and analyze.
Because what happened, how the character of Han Solo was treated in his death in The Force Awakens was offensive to me and told me that this franchise was in the wrong hands. So I really question the thinking of some of the people in charge who are overseeing some of these beloved franchises.
You may or may not agree, and that is quite all right, because we believe that a silver lining to all of this is that some get joy from the sequel trilogy. This is simply explanation as to why fans feel the way they do about Kathleen Kennedy.
So the callousness with which that was done is shocking to me to this day.
This is Star Wars Theme.